Greetings, everyone. This is Eric Grooms here, the Film Score Fanatic. Let's do a little quick review of Mandalorian Chapter 1 that came out today. Quick little side note before we start the actual review. I wanted to say that probably around 3 o'clock this afternoon, as I was finishing up my last hour at work, I thought to myself that it particularly felt like a Christmas day almost. There was a Christmassy feel to the entire day, and that's not just because baby, it was cold outside. The weather outside is frightful. But it's not quite Christmas time, but it felt like it because I had that thing where you have to exercise patience all day long, or for an extended period of time, because there's something that you're anxiously anticipating, and today that was obviously all the Disney Plus stuff that I had waiting for me at home. But I didn't want to watch it, just on my cell phone. That's not the way to experience something cinematic like this for the first time. So I could have watched it at work. And don't tell my employers that Disney Plus works on their Wi-Fi. Knock on wood. We'll see how long that lasts. It was. I kind of started to have a struggle with my patience towards the end of the workday, and then I had to go to the gym after work because that's my normal Tuesday routine. Which once I went to the gym, my mind was on the gym, so that was fine. But yeah, the moment I got home, it was like, all right, I got to clean myself up, and then I can sit down and watch the show, and then do my quick review here, which is probably not going to be that quick because I am not very succinct with my talking, as is indicated in this little preamble that has lasted for way too long. So I'll try not to look at my notes too much. But I think if I want to really give good, detailed thoughts, I need to have my notes. So the app worked beautifully, so that's good. I know that I saw some online stuff today that said that people were having issues with not being able to connect. I really think that's just like first day. Not everything's going to work perfectly. I myself, when I downloaded the app and when I opened it, and the first time I tried to actually look at something, not just the main menus, it showed a little error screen, but I backed out and refreshed, and it was fine from that point on. But for my purposes in this watch, I used my cell phone, but I didn't watch it on my cell phone. I connected it to my projector and my surround sound, and it worked perfectly. There was no issues with the sound not sounding right or the picture not looking crisp and clean. It was high quality picture and high quality sound. I watched a new Star Wars television show in my home theater, and that's fantastic. So I'm so excited for this to be my next, weekly required viewing show. We've lost Game of Thrones, that's over and done with, but now I've got Star Wars, which is, Game of Thrones was great, but Star Wars, it's so much better for a huge Star Wars nerd like me. So yeah, it was a fantastic viewing experience so far. Next thought I had was that this might actually be one of the main Star Wars entries that I might be able to enjoy with my father more than any other. My dad is the kind of person who will acquiesce to other people's movie tastes, but he has a very specific set of things that he genuinely enjoys when it comes to movies. Example, when we went and saw Jojo Rabbit, was that last weekend or 2 weekends ago? I don't think he cared at all. But he went and saw it with us. Now, the reason I say that this is something that I might be able to watch with him, because it's a Western. This show is, at least based on the indication we're getting from this first episode, and I can't imagine it's going to change, but it's a space Getty Western. Hey, finger guns. I'm sure somebody else on the internet has said that before, but I've never heard anybody else say it, and I'm saying it right now. So don't at me if I've repeated something that somebody else said. I didn't do it on purpose. But yeah, I'm going to take credit for that today. Space Getty Western, because it's clever. But yeah, that's what it feels like. It is a Western with space creatures and spacemen and space guns and spaceships. It's like so that's nice. And I feel like that relates a lot to Star Wars history. George Lucas, when he was creating Star Wars, was obviously he was trying to make like Flash Gordon type stuff, but he was taking a lot of inspiration from the foundations of modern Westerns, which was Kurosawa in Japan and things like that. So yeah, pretty cool with the Western themes. There was a lot of deep references in this episode, and I'm sure there will be continuing on in future episodes that Uber fans like me will see and love and really light up our imaginations with thinking about all of the details that our Star Wars dictionary minds start to fire off. We start to think about all the details, but for like a casual Star Wars fan, it just sounds like standard Star Wars jargon. So I think it's gonna be fun for everyone, and the casual people. Maybe it'll inspire them to like look something up, like what that thing that they said, like a mythosaur they mentioned in this episode, which I don't think this is spoiling anything, but that is the dinosaur that Boba Fett rides in the animated short that was in the Christmas special back in '78 or whatever. You can look it up. So yeah, there's the references like that like a huge nerd like me is gonna love. There's a healthy mix of, and I wanted to be clear to say this, pretty good CGI as well as pretty good practical effects. And I say that because I could tell the difference. Like you can see a CGI shot, which that's going to be hard to not be noticeable because it's a creature that's obviously CGI. And I emphasize the pretty good practical effects because there are some practical effects that I think looked great, and there are others that didn't quite look as great. There's one in particular that kind of took me out of it just a little bit, but it also was a mixture of, yeah, it takes me out just a little bit of the story, but also it reminded me of the original trilogy and the charming puppetry that was involved. So even though it's like I can see that it's clearly an animatronic mouth moving, and it's not perfect to the way a person's mouth would speak or whatever, it still reminds me of original Star Wars, and so in that way it's still successful. So I think that's a fascinating thing to consider. But if you like the original trilogy with the way they did the puppetry and everything like that, like they've got that in this show. And it's pretty dang good, but it's still noticeable in today's world of hyper CGI, really good CGI and stuff like that. So I've scrolled too far past some notes I need to talk about. In particular, when it comes to the practical effects, I think they're practical, but also CGI. I loved seeing IG-11 in action, probably because I've always loved IG-88, who is the assassin droid that we see in the lineup of bounty hunters in Empire Strikes Back. I think I always loved him because he's a cool-looking killer robot, and there's that mystery factor because we never really have seen a lot of IG assassin droids in action. There was a little bit in the Clone Wars animated series, but not a whole lot. And if you're not initiated with that whole series, you've never seen them. So there's some really cool stuff that they do with IG-11, who's voiced by Taika Waititi, and it's fun to hear hear a robot version of his voice, speaking all technical jargon and whatnot, while he's moving different body parts and shooting people in every direction. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't. But I'm hoping that we see a lot more of him in the future. So yeah. Let's see here. The score in this show for me was a mixed bag. It's done by Ludwig Göransson, Swedish fellow, who won the Oscar this last season for Black Panther. He's done a lot of work. He seems to be Ryan Coogler's go-to guy, because he's done all the Creed movies and Black Panther. And the reason I say it seems like a mixed bag for me is I feel like I was hearing a lot of different not references, but like influences. There's definitely Western motifs and themes that I enjoyed all of the Western type music. But there was also some bits that, kind of reminded me of like Blade Runner-esque, Vangelis synth moody stuff. Or there were some other moments that had like some kind of Game of Thrones style orchestration to it, which all of those things are great individually, but I didn't quite feel like everything felt like cohesive altogether. So, will it grow on me over time? I will find out. But I will say there were parts of it that I loved, the Western type stuff. So I guess I'll just have to continue. I'm obviously going to continue listening and see if it grows on me a bit. Obviously, there's a tall order for anybody who's doing a Star Wars score who isn't John Williams. He set the bar really high. So for me, it didn't quite feel like Star Wars music, but that's not fair. I say that because it's the truth for me, but I even that feels like unfair because it's not John Williams. It's never going to be John Williams. That's fine. Let's see here. So in conclusion, overall, this was a fantastic first step into Star Wars television storytelling. It's clear, and everyone knew this ahead of time, but it's clear that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are huge fans of Star Wars, and they care about it, and they're going to pay attention to details and, give us new stuff, but also stuff that we recognize as Star Wars. Jon Favreau is obviously the creator of the show and the showrunner and the producer, whatever you want to call him. And he wrote this first episode, and Dave Filoni directed. So this is Dave Filoni's first live-action Star Wars directing gig. So that's awesome, too. That's a good first step. For those of you that don't know, if you're not huge Star Wars nerds, Dave Filoni is the guy who created the Clone Wars animated TV series, which ended up, becoming a fan favorite, great addition to Star Wars lore. And he also created the animated Star Wars Rebels show. And he's like, many would consider the heir apparent to George Lucas. So the great first step for this new television branch. I also wanted to say I loved the end credits, and I imagine this is going to be the end credits for each episode. Which is basically a gallery of like concept art, painted scenes, or it's a little less concept-y because it was basically what was in the show. So I guess it's more like high quality storyboarding, but still, I've always thought of that as a very Star Warsy kind of thing in the Star Wars universe. Like, you've got great art that also accompanies the finished product. So that's kind of cool that they're putting that in there. I need to look up and see, was that a particular artist? Is there somebody that deserves credit for that? I'm sure there will probably be an art of the Mandalorian book at some point, and maybe all of these paintings will be in there. So that's pretty cool. Always love a little extra goodness for my eyeballs to intake. Quick shout out to Brian Posehn making a cameo. This is the kind of cameo that I can dig because he's a recognizable character actor, but it doesn't take you out of the story. He pops in, he pops out. But I love it because I love somebody like Brian Posehn. If you don't know who that is, look him up. You'll remember who he is if you look him up. So it's just a nice little thing that kind of gives me a little giggle. But anyway, there's some other stuff that happened in the episode that I'd love to talk about. But I don't want to talk huge spoilers right now. There's a huge moment at the end that I'm excited for the possibilities, but I'm not going to say anything about the details of that. Whenever you see it, you know how to contact me. We can talk about it. So yeah. Anyway, I think that'll be the conclusion. I've gone a little too long. I need to get better at speaking quickly and not trailing on my thoughts. But have I convinced you to watch it? Were you already planning on watching it? After you watch it, do you have any thoughts to share with me? Make sure you comment down below in the comment section, and we'll start a conversation about the show. Let's try to keep it not so spoilery. If you want to talk about spoiler stuff, Look me up on the social media stuff, and yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good YouTube jazz. And yeah, I've been the Film Score Fanatic, Eric Grooms, and may the force be with you.